This was Time's Game of the Year in 2014. It has won countless awards. It put the game engine of Inkle on the map. So, have you heard about 80 Days? Before we get into the review, I did this video in my Patient Gaming series where I basically say, as I get older, I value my time more. I value good games more. Because I was telling a friend the other day, who has the time for mediocre games? There are so many good ones. I have piles of games that have received mountains of praise that I still haven't sat down and played. So all my reviews from this day out are about games I liked. So for a too long didn't watch of this video, I liked 80 Days. I recommend 80 Days. Keep watching to find out why. I haven't done one of these reviews in a while, but I'm still a true believer that the glory of gaming really comes in the variety of big productions with massive studios and weird, small, tiny games that give different experiences and everything in between. So in between playing some of the latest blockbusters in the past many months, 80 Days has been one of my indie games of choice. And for its price point of around $15, and it often goes on sales for much less, man, it is a steal. 80 Days is not the most mouth-watering game visually, aesthetically, and it probably looks super boring to watch, and I think it is super boring to watch. It's really just a collection of images depicting character, location, and means of transportation. It's mostly a game of text, with the movement only really coming from moving around the globe being the best visual sequence of the game. But if you like maps, if you were the kid who idly spun the globe in geography class, or the adult who randomly finds themselves on Google Maps, then there's something tantalizing in the simple animations of lines extending outwards from city to city, unearthing new paths, stretching wordlessly across the world, across borders, across oceans. There's a simple joy in trying to plan out your next 3 stops ahead, and for it to go predictably awry. The world of 80 Days is so engrossing and mysterious that it drives me to revisit the game every so often. There's a ton of hidden adventures and storylines as the game becomes less about the race of 80 Days and more so about exploring this late 19th century alternate history. There are Italian terrorist revolutionaries, giant submarines, Mongolian princess mathematicians, mechanical camels, airships and guilds of artificers, and a reimagining of the colonial narrative that is so dominant in our own history. All of this is through the lens of the wager from the English Gentleman's Club. Phineas Fogg bet he could travel around the world in 80 days. And Passepartout, the player, is his French valet. This is based on a novel by Jules Verne, and where it too questions the dominant British colonial empire of the time. And so too does Passepartout watch a reimagined past. But his sense of being an outsider never lets him exert the often power fantasy of player agency over particular stories, as if it's not our place to really get involved. It's probably what makes the stories of 80 Days continually relevant and enticing even so many years after its release. We get this kaleidoscopic view of the world, of a world that is both like and unlike our own. And traveling across multiple playthroughs through learning more of the world of 80 Days, I think we kind of learn a little bit more about our own. It's around the second or third attempt, and each attempt can kind of last anywhere from 90 minutes to maybe to 2 hours, depending on your read speed and how good you are at navigating some of the game's simple travel mechanics. But it's around the second or third attempt where the game shifts, becoming from a race to becoming an adventure. As a lover of maps and geography, there's enough tantalization for me from seeing the paths of travel unfold from one city to the next. But there's not really a ton of systems under the hood of 80 Days. At least ones you can interact with. Passepartout takes on new traits through his decisions, through the interactions, through the scenarios, through even which paths he takes. His relationship with Phineas can morph and evolve, but I never really understood what kind of impact or consequence I'm having. 80 Days never shows you how X decision or Y relationship status triggers a certain kind of outcome. There's no Bioware, your companion approves +1 relationship status. And I think this design was more controversial back at release than it is today. We're seeing more and more how choice-based games don't really like to hold the hand of the player, presenting the illusion question mark that meaningful choice could be anywhere at any time. There are some other mechanics to simulate the fantasy of the globetrotting adventure. There are some ways and methods that you need to think about in managing your cash as you need to travel, the items you can bring along in your suitcases, how to barter at markets, and these are all fine little ways of keeping the player engaged, but none would be interesting if the world of 80 Days wasn't. So, a $15 game with so far 8 hours of adventure through this alternate history world was well worth it for me. Some of its reimaginings have stuck with me long after each playthrough. It's a great game to pick up if you want to see a well-written interactive narrative game that you can just finish 2 hours later. It's not a waste of your time or your money. And so it's why it gets Questmarker's seal of approval. It's why I'm talking about it here, because I mentioned in one of my videos many moons ago, I'm only here now to talk about games that I've enjoyed playing, and 80 Days is one of them.